I was on a date with a guy, and we took a drive down in this small district with all of these abandoned buildings. I'm not at all sure what the history behind it is. At the end of the road, which was maybe 5 to 10 miles long, there's a house. It's a big house, fenced off and completely abandoned. It was eerie, but still fun sight to see, like everything else in that area. According to the guy I was out with, the house was owned by a family who were murdered by one of the servants, all in the same night. I don't really believe that, but I also didn't search it much. According to him, you can still hear the screams of the family some nights. He said sometimes you can smell smoke and hear an eerie woman's laughter from around the house. Not entirely sure about all of that. He wanted to go in, but it's still considered private property, so I told him that I wasn't comfortable with it. After goofing off for a few minutes outside the fence, he took me home. Well, since then, I've been having the exact same dream every night. In the dream, it's like I'm walking, but I can't really see my body. I find myself standing in front of the house, where I walk to the door and twist the knob 3 times. Then I hit the door frame with the palm of my hand. After that, I go to the side window, where I hear a voice saying, "Go help Katie." That's when I wake up. I now have usually a hard time getting to sleep. I've been having to put the TV on after waking up. Can someone please give me a little bit of insight? I'm a little scared. I've never had a bad dream like this. Can it just be logical or some sort of sleep paralysis? Please be nice. I don't know anything about this stuff. Last night I was on my phone texting my girlfriend, and out of the corner of my eye I saw a random bright flash of light. My door to my room is to my left, and I always leave it open. And when I look down from my bed, I always see my door first. It was pitch dark. Ever since I have been living here, the lights from cars always come through the curtains, but you can barely see them since I'm on the 2nd floor. The flash of light looked exactly like this. It was a bit more white, though. Appeared for a quarter of a second. It was bright, and the light almost took up the entire hallway, but it appeared and disappeared so quickly that my eyes didn't have time to start squinting. I have had one other paranormal thing happen to me before here in this house, and it was more like an attack. So I live in an old house, probably 80-year-old house, pretty old regardless. Every night around 2 a.m., like clockwork, I smell cigarette smoke in my toilet. I have 2 other roommates, none who smoke. I've lived here for 1.5 years now. No problems other than when I go pee in the middle of the night. And then there's that smoke smell. Should I just ignore it since it hasn't posed any problems for me? I really don't want to confront it since it doesn't affect me and stays within the bathroom. Okay, so I think it was in early January 2021. Me and my friend were like hanging out since we were neighbors, and we found out that the 3rd apartment was open. We thought maybe the caretaker left it open, since no one lives there anymore. We decided to come inside out of curiosity. She and I made the apartment our hangout place, since the caretaker has not come back. One night, me and my friend decided to come inside to talk. We were scaring each other with some stories that we know, and then I dared her to go up the stairs. She was kinda against it, but she still went. As she was climbing, I focused my eyes on her, since I was kind of afraid that something might happen. She then stopped and said she didn't want to continue, and of course I didn't want to force her. So I said sure, and after a second or two, I saw someone right in front of her, a girl who looked just like my friend staring at me, as if she was mad at me. She was wearing a night dress with sleeves to her wrist, and the dress covering her knee. At the very end of it was some blood, and then the girl disappeared. I talked to my friend about this, and she believed me since paranormal stuff happens to people. It has almost been a year and I still couldn't forget about the girl. So we decided to ask help from others in Reddit. So if you have any theories about this, please comment right away since we can't get it off our minds. Thank you so much. Please do believe that everything I said was not a lie. It really happened. When I was younger, I was staying on a farm with my family. There was the farm owner's house, our house, and another man who bred horses staying out the back of the property. One night there was a piercingly loud scream very late at night. It was obviously a bird, but it sounded so much like a young woman screaming. You could easily mistake it for a horror movie scream. I'd never heard a bird like that before or after, even though I'd lived in the area for years. A Google search said, "It is nicknamed the Screaming Woman Bird." I thought the bird might have been hurt or stuck, so I wanted to go out and see if I could help. My mother insisted I do not go, because of the horses and it being so late. The bird only screamed a few more times, then went quiet, and I forgot about it. 2 days later, there were police cars outside our house. They said that 2 days earlier, the horse breeder had been kicked in the chest by one of his horses and was found dead by the owner of the property. That horse was quite aggressive. It would run up and down along the fence all day, turning the grass to dirt while watching the mares. The next day, it was taken away to put him down. It was as though the bird came from somewhere else to tell us something was wrong. How would it even know this had occurred from a distant place? The police said that he would have died instantly, but who knows? Maybe if I had gone out that night, I could have saved him. The bird is supposedly an aboriginal and is considered a devil bird that foretold someone's death. Hey everyone, new guy here. I was wondering if anyone happened to know what it means to have a strong cigarette smell in particular rooms of my house. Specifically only mine so far, but my folks have smelled the same thing despite quitting years ago. I'll smell it at night after everyone's gone to bed, but it's not unheard of to smell it during the day as well. At the time of typing this at 11:30 p.m., I smell it pretty heavenly. It's weird though, because when I take a deep breath expecting to smell the odor even heavier, I get nothing. I also feel like I only smell it when I start feeling really sad in the night. Not sure if the two things are connected or not either. Any advice would be cool. Maybe it's nothing. But I just find it funny that the fixtures have come loose lately across the house, as well as plates falling over for no reason. Thanks in advance. When I was young, 7 or 9-ish, we lived in a large house built in early 1900s or late 1890s for around 2 years. It was rented from an estate in generally acceptable condition on the inside. I will always remember the house was split in two distinct parts, not by walls or anything physical, but by the way it felt. The house had a staircase that arose in the middle of the property. We, family, lived on the left side. The right side and its rooms were empty, apart from the occasional nanny or cook. The essentially uninhabited part, apart from the nanny, I will never forget, as it truly felt sinister. I remember often seeing shadows move in the corner of my eye. In the main dining room and its adjacent butler's pantry, my brother and I would place bets on who would have the balls to run to the end of the corridor and back, or indeed enter one of the rooms, which were painted in a hideous blue. The children refused to go upstairs alone. I think now, as a grown man, I would still be reluctant to. I will never forget how shocked I was to learn that my brother was bathing alone upstairs after distinctively intense stick battle in the woods. He is a known author and was inspired to put this online after I stumbled across a draft on his desk that described the corridor. And in his experiences of the house, which obviously is far superior to my description and strangely similar to it, given that we have not discussed this topic for over 40 years. One always felt as if someone was watching or present. I am sure people are able to relate to this. To this day, I didn't experience that again. Our family nanny, who was essentially our mother at the time, was from the Philippines and always said that she was never alone in a part of the house and that frequently important possessions of her would be moved from her room to the opposite end of the house. We had one chef from Brazil who wouldn't sleep there at night and one who stayed with us. The previous occupiers had organized 2 separate visits from the local Catholic church to perform exorcisms on the property, and one of the gardeners had committed suicide by throwing himself into the lake and drowning after attaching stones to himself in 1912. One of the most unsettling things about the house was the silence. You almost hear and feel it. The house is situated in a rural area, but expensive property market, which has a large demand for period manor houses. However, it seems strange that people only seem to rent the place for more than a year or 2, and the owners have been renting it because they have had tremendous difficulty in selling. It is still listed online. Say what you will, I am usually very clinical of the paranormal, and I am certainly not spiritual, but that distinct divide will stay with me forever. I believe that most things can be described, though, coincidence or such like. But for me, that energy will remain unexplained. It's been distinctively challenging to actually explain that property and one's experiences there, but I hope I have done so in a way that can be understood. Best wishes and Happy New Year. Hi everybody, it's curiousraven. I will say that the first story, I do need to shout out their podcast. Is called Spine Chillers and Serial Killers. They are the most funny 3 women that I have ever listened to. They had me cracking up so much, and they put a funny twist on paranormal and ghostly stories, and also they talk about true crime stories. So please go check them out on any type of platform that you would listen to a podcast on. Thank you, ladies, for allowing me to read your story. Told you I'd be back. Here's a true story I wrote a few years ago about my creepy child. In the past, I was quite fascinated by all things spooky. I was a horror film buff, loved a good book about true hauntings, and for many years I was a goth. And during that time, I learned something. Kids are creepy, especially little girls. Although granted, Damien from The Omen wasn't exactly a ray of sunshine. But generally speaking, if there's a little girl in a horror film, you know at some point she is going to be climbing up walls or projectile vomiting over priest. That's just the way it is. Bearing this in mind, I can't deny that when I found out I was pregnant with my eldest, somewhere in the back of my mind, there was an uneasy thought. What if she turns out to be creepy? Of course, the second she was born, that thought vanished entirely, and I was completely wrapped up in how friggin' adorable and perfect and cute she was. Quite possibly the most beautiful baby in the world ever. Okay, I might be a little bit biased, but you guys get the idea. Not a creepy bone in her chubby little body. That is until now. She is now coming up to 4 years old. She is extremely bright and extraordinarily eloquent for a 3-year-old. This means that sometimes she comes out with things you wouldn't expect a child her age to say. Up until now, when she has said something surprisingly clever, I must admit I do tend to be incredibly proud and secretly smug. Ha, my child is a genius. What good parents we must be. But recently, I have kind of been wishing she wasn't quite so eloquent, as some of the random clever things she has been saying are truly terrifying. I mean, like stomach churning. We're going to need an exorcist terrifying. It started maybe a month or two ago. She started talking about Leo, her invisible friend. Wonderful, I thought to myself. Imaginary friends are creepy as F. And this is always how it starts in the films. Now, I know she has a friend at school called Leo, so I just put it down to an overactive imagination. Even when she told me that Leo had climbed into bed with me and was hiding under the duvet by my feet, I didn't let it get to me. It's just harmless play, I would say to myself. And then I would give myself a mental pat on the back for being so sensible and grown up about it. There was a time I would have freaked out about invisible little boys crawling into bed with me, but not now. No, now I was a fearless mom. Go me. After a few weeks, Sarah showed up. To my daughter, of course, we could not see her. Just like the cheeky little bed stealing scamp Leo. So now there were two. But just like she had an actual friend called Leo, she also knows a Sarah, her dance teacher. So, again, we just put it down to her imagination. All was well in the world with Leo and Sarah. They would chase around the house or have imaginary water balloon fights, and hardly ever do anything creepy, like perch on window sills during the night to watch us sleep. Then a week ago, we had my husband's parents over for dinner. We're enjoying a nice family dinner when out of nowhere my daughter starts talking about her friends. Except now, there are 3. Now there is a Clement. She does not know a Clement. There is no one by that name at her school. I checked. He is not a character from one of her books or from any of the cartoons she watches. I have no explanation for Clement, and she is not sure who he is either. Really. Leo and Sarah are brother and sister, but Clement is just naughty. That's all we know about him. I would have much preferred him to be funny or silly, but no, all he is naughty. Great. And then she blurts out, "And you know Leo is dead. Sarah killed him. Dead like your granddad, Mummy." My mother-in-law and I just stared at each other, not saying a word, but safe to say we knew what we were both thinking. What the actual fuck? My lovely husband senses my absolute horror at what my beautiful angel had just announced at the dinner table and tries to come to the rescue. "But it's just pretend, darling, isn't it? He's okay, really? He's not really dead." She says, "No, Daddy, he's really dead. Sarah killed him." She merely replies in between 2 mouthfuls of chips. I felt a bit sick at this point. I was not looking forward to sharing my bedroom with my daughter and her new mates at bedtime. Yes, my nearly 4-year-old still sleeps in our room, but that's a whole nother post. So as we were getting ready for bed, she starts talking about them again, this time adding that we have an angry lady called Violet living in our attic space. She is always cross and has purple lips. A fun fact about our attic space is, it's not actually closed off by a wall. It just has a see-through banister to stop anything falling out. So I can see everything in our attic that overlooks my bed. I know, I'm never sleeping again. Awesome. So I said, "Sweetheart, can we not talk about them now? They are only pretend. They are not real." What she said next, and how she said it, will probably haunt me forever more. Her face dropped in a scowl. She came very close to my face, squinted her eyes and said, "They are real." Then started laughing and added, "They are shouting, Mommy. They're always shouting." Can you say pants change in aisle 3? As she grew up, we heard less and less about her invisible friends. But I must admit, not a night goes by that I don't look up in the attic space and imagine an angry Violet staring back at me. Just to update the story a little, last week I heard both my kids chanting in their playroom. I went to check on them and saw they had put some toys in a circle with a Woody doll in the middle. "What are you guys up to?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Oh, nothing, Mummy. We are just trying to summon the Woody demon." "Oh," I replied. "What is the Woody demon?" Instantly regretted my question when my youngest said, "A few days ago, I heard Woody talk by himself, so now we want to do it again." My kids are little. They shouldn't know anything about demons. It's not like me and my husband talk about anything like that in front of them. And how the heck did they know what to chant and how to put their toys in a circle? "Have kids," they said. "It'd be fun," they said. I have something that happened when I was in 5th grade. If you're interested, please listen to the story and try to debunk what is going on, and if it's a real ghost or just in my head. When it was lunchtime, me and my friends went to a specific place that we usually go to whenever it's lunchtime. The place was a grass field, a military camp. It has a lot of military trucks and stuff. It was our personal playground, climbing the trucks. There's also this inconsistent tapping sound on one of the trucks. It's just a specific truck that makes the tapping sound. At first we were scared, but we eventually got used to it. But my friend, let's call him Mike for this story. Mike saw a beautiful woman with a long white dress. He told everyone what he saw, and of course we were curious. We followed him, and he indeed was telling the truth. My friends saw the lady except me, so I was very skeptical. They didn't pay much attention to her since it was the daytime, and it was rude of them to call her a ghost. But I still didn't see her, so I was looking for her, but found nothing. So after 30 minutes, we haven't really seen her since the first time. But Mike and 2 other friends left, and it was just me and 2 of my friends. Let's call them Gabriel and CJ for this story. CJ and Gabriel and I were discussing about the white lady that they saw. And of course, I was joking around because I didn't actually believe it. But they always tell me that it was a ghost, and I got pretty scared. At that time, I remember the tapping noise. CJ and I searched under the truck for something that triggers the tapping noise. But instead, we found the lady's feet on the other side of the truck. She still wore the same white dress. After that, CJ and I got scared, which leads to Gabriel getting scared as well. So we ended up going back to school. At home, I told my grandma I saw a ghost in the military camp. She knows the place since she was a former Marine soldier. I didn't even specify what ghost I saw. I just told her I saw a ghost. That's when she told me that there was a beautiful white lady that was roaming around the camp. Her description matched so much like what we saw, I was so freaked out. She told me that the woman is beautiful at day but turns ugly at night. She later added that there was a black shirt man that hates daylight and tends to hide over shadows. The next day at school, we were hesitant to go back there anymore, but lunchtime I invited Gabriel and CJ to go back there to figure out what was going on. Gabriel was hesitant, but accepted since he never actually saw the lady's feet. CJ, however, declined because he was so scared. So after we went to that camp, it's just me and Gabriel. We were trying to find the lady again, but we found nothing. After 20 minutes of searching, I heard that same tapping noise again, and it was the truck 5 feet in front of me. I called Gabriel to come here, but he was far away trying to search for the ghost, so he couldn't hear me. So I decided to look under it by myself, but I found myself scared as hell, so I went as far enough as possible that I was basically 15 feet away in front of the truck. The tapping noises still continued. I looked under the truck. I was very far, so I couldn't really see much after I concentrated. I saw a black man, a figure hanging from the truck. He was looking straight at me, and that made me freak out so much that I called Gabriel and told him let's leave. Without any explanation, he was so confused, but I think he saw how scared I was, so went along anyways. After that, I was never going back there again. To this day, I'm still puzzled on what's going on. I've never really believed in ghosts were real, but after that, I'm starting to doubt myself. Can anyone explain what's going on? I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little drunk, so sorry for any spelling errors or whatever. Anyways, I'm a preschool teacher, and kids are weird, and we all know they are in tune with the paranormal, right? Right. So, this was my first year working in preschool as an assistant teacher. That part doesn't really matter, to be honest. So, there's this one little girl that just starts out. She's 3 years old. She doesn't get along with the other kids as well, but she talks to me a lot. She goes on and on about this other kid, presumably a sibling or something. She talks about how they spend time together, play games, go to the park. I'm like, wow, what a cute sibling relationship. The name of this other kid is obviously a real name and something a 3-year-old wouldn't come up with. So one day, Dad picks up and I'm making small talk. I say, when am I going to meet insert name of sibling here? Student talks about her all the time. Dad gets quiet like he knows, but wants to pretend he doesn't, and then he's like, who? And I say the name again, and I say, oh, I thought she had a sibling. She talks about her, and all the fun stuff they do all the time. And he's like, no, she doesn't have a siblings. So then he doesn't say anything else, and it's awkward, and he leaves with his kid quickly. The next day, I'm all curious. So I ask the kid while she's doing an art project, and I'm like, so who is blank, name of imaginary friend? And she dead ass stops what she is doing, goes blank-faced, looks at me with the most dead eyes I've seen a 3-year-old give, and says, she's the girl who watches me sleep through my window at night. Bro, when I tell you I shit my pants. I asked her to draw a picture. I don't know if you know this, but 3-year-olds are horrible at drawing pictures. So it was just a circle person with stick legs and arms and a triangle bow on her head. But that isn't all. I actually babysat this kid a few times. Her bedroom was on the 2nd floor of their house. There wasn't a tree there for anyone to climb up or anything. And I asked her if so-and-so still watched her, and she was like, no. Mommy and Daddy went to church, and insert her special imaginary friend's name here, stopped coming over to play with me. If you're interested in hearing more crazy things, I have heard from more scary stories from preschoolers. I have way more than just this. I shared an experience about something creepy that happened while working with preschoolers last night, and I mentioned I actually have more. People commented that they wanted to hear them, so here's another one. During COVID, the preschool where I work stayed open, but it was a small place with only 2 classrooms, and a lot of kids didn't come at that time. It ended up being me and 1 kid a lot of the days. So one evening, we're sitting on the floor playing, and I say something to her with the doll I have or whatever, and the kid doesn't answer. I look up at her, and she's not looking at me or at the dolls at all. She's looking over my shoulder, just blank-faced. My first instinct was just to say, H, her name. She didn't respond right away. There was a little spot of silence, but she did. She looked me in the eye and said, your mommy is hugging you right now and wants to tell you she misses you. My first thought upon hearing that was to check on my mom because I was terrified. So I texted her asking if she was okay. I got a response right away and she was. So I was like, Okay, whatever, and I tried not to think about it again. We keep playing and a few minutes pass, and then the kid stops and says, "Miss Y, what does your mommy look like?" I reminded her that she's seen my mom before when she picked me up one day because my car wasn't working. She goes, "Oh, I have seen your mommy." That wasn't your mommy then. I asked her who it was. She said she didn't know. I really don't want to ask her anymore, because sometimes I worry that the kids will tell their parents our conversations and then parents will think I'm crazy. Ghost enthusiast who's teaching their kids scary shit. Also, the kid never said anything like this before or after. It was super random for her. Honestly, when this one happened, I think the kid was just as freaked the fuck out as me. Hopefully he forgets this as an adult so it doesn't traumatize him. Anyways, I worked at a preschool. This place was old, like 70 years old. So one day my director comes to me. She's been working there for 40 years. She's a very dedicated lady. And she's like, "One of the kids I used to teach passed away, and the funeral is being held in our church building next week, so I'm not going to be around that day." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So about a week later, she does her thing. The day after the funeral, I'm chilling with the kiddos, sitting on the carpet, and one of them asked me, "Miss Y, when is that new kid going to start coming here?" And I was like, new kid. We hadn't had any families tour the building for a while. So I asked him, and he said he saw a little boy walking around yesterday, looking in the doorways and watching the kids play. He thought it was some kid on a tour. I was like, "No one new came in yesterday, buddy." And he just said, "Oh," and looked a little freaked out. A child with a sense for once. And if I hadn't been so nervous before, this kid's face made me feel it. I don't know exactly what he saw, but it seemed like it might have been something a little more than just seeing a new kid playing in the doorways. Anyways, day continues as per usual. I stayed late that night because the cleaners didn't come, so I did it instead. So I'm doing my job, just finished cleaning, turning off the lights when I hear the distinct sound of a child talking, and my stomach drops because my first thought is, holy shit, did I miscount and lose a child today? Holy shit. So I call out, "Hey, who's here?" And it gets quiet. Now it's a little spooky. So I think, okay, maybe I imagined it or just heard someone outside. Mind you, it's dark and cold outside because it's winter, and it's not like we have just casual visitors just walking by this place with their kids. But we make up whatever narrative helps us sleep at night, you know? So I continue doing my thing, getting closer to the church building that's connected to the preschool by an open hallway, and I hear it again, louder. Little kid chit-chat chattering away, and it's definitely from inside the dark church building, where all the lights are off. And I say my fucking prayers because I know I have to check and make sure I didn't forget a kid. I just have to, okay? So I walk over there. My butt is so clenched, and the church is looking scary as hell. The talking stops, and I flip on the lights, check every little corner of the room like a madman, and booked it out. I am not religious, but I was thanking the Lord for that being the end of it, because if I had the displeasure of actually seeing something, I would have just simply passed away. So anyways, lucky for the cleaners that they didn't come that night. Sorry this one was a bit long. I had to add so much context though. So my daughter, who is almost 13, has always seemed to have this kind of thing she would do when impending doom was near. The first instance was when my grandfather was sickly. He had prostate cancer. Anyway, well, one morning we were over there, helping my grandmother out. My daughter was probably 5 or 6 at the time, and we were just standing around talking, and I was talking to my grandfather, and all of a sudden she comes up to me and taps me and says, "Mama, can I get in bed with grandfather?" I really didn't want her to because I was afraid she'd kick him by mistake or something, but he was like, "Yeah, you can get up here, baby." She got on the bed and had this very weird, almost sad look on her face. I didn't think anything of it, so fast forward a week later, and my grandfather died. The next one was I had to keep my friend's baby girl here while she worked, and later that day my daughter made it home from school, and me and the baby was laying in the bed. I was like 5 months pregnant, so she came and stood on the side of my bed, rubbing the back of her hair, and she had the exact same look of sadness on her face as with my grandfather. But I didn't think to put 2 and 2 together just yet. So she goes, "Mama, can I get in the bed with the baby?" I said yes. She lay down beside him, and she had a sad look all over her face. Well, the next week the baby was dead from SIDS. The next incident involves my grandma. She was sick, and I was feeding her, and she couldn't hardly talk, but she wanted to see my kids. So when my daughter got up to her, I looked at her face. She had the same sadness from the last 2 times. Then the next day, my grandma was dead. I'm just trying to see what other people think of this. Ever since moving to a new place a year ago, me and my boyfriend think we've witnessed some odd or paranormal things. Soon after moving in, while I was home alone, it felt like someone grabbed and pulled my ankle while I was laying in bed. Then I had a dream where I was watching myself from bird's eye view being pulled off my bed into what I can only describe as a black abyss. My boyfriend says he has seen what he thought was a shadow moving before, and sometimes feels like he's being watched. I have had a few dreams recently that felt different than nightmares. Something paranormal was actually happening to me in the dream, and it felt evil. This is different than any other nightmare I've had, where it usually was running from danger or something like that. It felt off and, well, like I said, evil. I woke up and I prayed. I have never felt like this before. It's been years since I've been a typical practicing Christian, but what's been going on at my home lately has me wondering what I should be doing to reconnect to my faith and protect myself from evil. I have been wearing my cross again, especially when sleeping. Maybe I'm just overanalyzing, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. What else can I do? I will take any advice. Thank you. It's 12 a.m. exactly. My dad pulls into our driveway after a long drive. We had just spent the weekend out of town. My dad and I both see that we left his bedroom light on, which was odd, because we usually are good with turning lights off when going on trips, and it doesn't seem like something we would forget to do. This is in the middle of the summer, so we never sleep upstairs because of how hot it gets. So we sleep downstairs with the AC running. I never liked sleeping downstairs in the living room on the couch just because I wasn't used to it, and there was more open space that I couldn't see due to the dark. I have a dream that I believe is tied to this experience in some way, because I usually don't remember my dreams. But this one I remember, plus it was an odd dream. The dream was that I had gotten out of the shower, and for some reason the shower light wasn't on. So I tried turning it on, and it would not turn on. Here is where stuff really goes down. I wake up with my eyes closed, and I can move perfectly fine. All of a sudden, I feel a sharp, deep pain in both of my spleens, as if someone was slowly stabbing both of my spleens at the same time. I just lay there and start thinking, oh, not again. I thought, oh, not again, because I have had spleen targeted before in other smaller experiences. The more time passes, the more it hurts. It gets to a point to where it hurts so much that I start to scream, but I can't. Nothing comes out. All I can do is open my mouth and make a noise that sounded like I was being strangled, and I couldn't breathe through my mouth, even though I could breathe just fine. As soon as I start to yell, the pain stops, and I am petrified. And whenever I get scared, I usually pretend to sleep, so that's what I did, and I eventually fall back to sleep. P.S. The pain only went for about 6 to 7 seconds until I tried to yell. My thoughts are, I have no idea how to explain that night. I am young still, a teen, so I don't know if this is just my mind. But I've had experience like this, but just not as bad. Like I would have dreams, and in the dream, my spleen would hurt and I can actually feel the pain. Even when I wake up, I feel the pain in my spleen a little bit. I'm writing to share my experience and maybe get some answers. Feel free to ask any questions or state any concerns. For a bit of context, my father died in a car crash when I was 11. My parents split up when I was 1. Both moved to places far apart, but they still got along pretty well. Prior to my birth, my dad used to stay over at my grandma's, mom's mom, pretty often. It happened sometime after my dad had died, less than a year for sure. I was over at my grandma's. Her apartment is on 2 floors. The one on top is organized in a big open spacious area broken up by some closets, creating a semi-octagon hollow corridor. There are a couple mirrors. The whole area serves as an introduction to the bedroom. Pretty big room, with a big double bed in the center, and a TV right next to the door. Sitting on the bed, you could get a clear view of the screen, plus part of the corridor, the mirrors, and the ending part of the open space. So I was sitting on the bed watching some cartoons when in my peripheral view, I caught a shadow crossing the mirrors, the wall, walking the last part of the open space area, and disappear into the wall. The shadow resembled the figure of a man. You could see the outline of slightly messy hair, a nose, and a chin. It was like a side view of a man crossing my grand's apartment. I called to my gran, and she answered from the kitchen, which is on the bottom floor. It was just the 2 of us at home. I jumped, standing, and ran downstairs. When I told her about what had just happened, she said it was probably my dad paying me a visit, and that I should not worry about it. It couldn't have been her, as the stairs are both really noisy and vertically built. The steps are attached to a pole. Plus, she was already downstairs. My grandpa leaves at 7 a.m. and comes back around 8 p.m., so it surely wasn't him. And after that one time, I never saw the shadow again. I'm not a skeptic, but not a believer either. Yet I can find no rational explanation to this event. What do you think? The first time I ever stayed overnight at an old cemetery was in the town that I grew up in. My friends and I snuck out of the house and met up at the cemetery. The part of the United States I live in doesn't have a super long history, say like the East Coast or Europe. But in the area there used to be Native Americans, and early graves were there from just after the Civil War era, like late 1870s. The gates around the cemetery were low at some points, so we would just hop over, and we ended up by a statue that was like an angel in mourning. It was like about 10 feet tall, and you couldn't see the face, all white stone marble. The thing about the statue was, it was said to be a haunted cemetery, and that strange things happened to the statue at night, mostly stories from older teens passed down. We picked that area and brought a couple of candles and a small flashlight for light. It was a bit windy, and even though our candle was in the glass jar, it kept blowing out. Some of our friends moved over to the newer mausoleum area and sat on the marble benches to have the candlelight. A couple of them had enough and ran back home. I opted to stay seated under the statue until just before dawn, as I knew my mom would get up and know I wasn't there. I had a little throwaway flashlight, as I didn't want to attract any attention by any cars driving late at night, even though I doubted they could see it from the street, as the cemetery had slight hills. At just before 3 a.m., everyone left and went back home, but I opted to stay. I sat there under the statue all alone. In the distance, I hear animals, which wasn't out of the question for the area. I was afraid of a coyote or mountain lion, but not really, and had a plan to run to the mausoleum, as there was a section that had a gate that closed with like a doorknob but didn't lock. Shortly before 5 a.m., my brain started playing tricks with me, as I swore the statue moved its head and hands several times. I jumped and turned the flashlight. There was also a faint light that went slowly off and on, but it wasn't like headlights, almost like a candle being blown out. At first, I thought it was my friend playing a trick on me. The light never came closer or moved in any direction. Eventually, I got up and ran home, but there is where I got the most unnerved. I ran through the cemetery, then had a sudden feeling like I was being chased. The part of the cemetery I was heading for was towards the new section, as that would have led me to the street closer to my house. Suddenly I changed direction and went to the nearest fence with the street access, but as I ran in that direction, I had forgot that section had older chain link fence, and so I cut again back towards east, and when I eventually hopped the wrought iron fence, I felt like something was going to pull me back in. I kept running home, and afraid to look back. Can't explain what caused me to lose it at the very end, but I felt like I was going to throw up, because my mouth was so dry, and I was covered in sweat. I did stop when I reached the opening to my street, and there was a stop sign. I grabbed it. My mouth was just so dry, my heart was pounding in my throat. When I was sure I wouldn't make a sound, I went home and stripped off my clothes in the garage, as they were all dirty, and it would have been more natural if my parents saw me in my boxers and sweaty, dirty jeans and sneakers. I went to the kitchen and drank what seemed like 10 glasses of water. I went to my upstairs room very quietly, and the next morning my mom asked if I had gotten up earlier that morning. She said she thought she heard crying. I just said I got up because I was thirsty and that I wasn't crying. She said, yeah, I know it wasn't you, but thought you were watching TV upstairs. I never told my friends the end part of what happened, just that I waited till morning and went home. I didn't tell them about my freak out, the water, or my mom hearing someone crying. So, I haven't had anything like this happen to me in a while, but I am freaking out on the verge of tears. And normally I'm a person who bottles in their emotions, but I need help on what I just experienced right now. Okay, so I'm doing a bit of late spring cleaning. I found an old EVP recorder from high school ghost hunting. My Nana recently passed away, and I've been missing her recently. I decided that I'd try to see if I can catch my Nana while I sleep. I started recording at 11:01 p.m. It is now 11:46 p.m. The last thing I said was "Good night, Nana," and slowly felt this heavy feeling, this heavy aura surrounding me. It was almost like someone wrapping their arms around me in a comfort, but then it felt like my whole body was being shocked and the energy being pulled from me. I woke up from a fit only to see a shadow watching me from my Nana's room where she died. It felt like her, but darker. Okay, just like the title says, this one is a very short story, and it literally just happened. So I was in the kitchen getting an ice lolly, because it's 20 degrees Celsius, and when I was taking the plastic off at the kitchen door, I see a black shoes walk in, and I think it's my mother, so I look up, but no one was there. I told my mom, and she says that her phone was typing "you" continually by itself 2 hours ago. So, I don't know, I guess the kitchen is haunted. Okay, hi, I'm back again, and this time I have a story of a few years back when I went to a cemetery with my mother and godmother. It's a short story, but it's good. So I was walking around the cemetery taking photos, which I do have saved. Some are down below. If you want to see the rest, tell me. And at one point, I suddenly turn in a random direction and see a man in a suit just walking down a path, and he is emitting this glowing white light from everywhere on his body. He walks behind a tree and vanishes. An hour or so later, when we were about to leave, I see him again, but this time heading up the path that leads in front of the church where we were. I watch as he walks behind a tree and disappears. I turn the tree to see if he was there, but he was gone. I can't remember the cemetery's name, but if I remember, I will put it in the comments. Stay safe out there, everyone. This happened in the middle of June 2020. It was a very strange experience. I have yet to hear a reasonable explanation for what had happened this night. For some background, I have never believed in anything paranormal. My girlfriend claims to have had a couple paranormal experiences, but they seem too cliche to be legitimate. I live in Utah, and I'm not religious. However, a common hangout spot at night in Utah is the nearest church. My friend used to live in a neighborhood with a church in it. We would hang out, eat food, talk, etc. Right next to the church was an underground tunnel that was also a common trail people would take. The road goes over the tunnel. The road above the tunnel is about 20 feet above the tunnel, and the road is pretty much a bridge. So after we were done hanging out, I was driving back alone. As I cross over the bridge, I see a black and white cat fall off the bridge into where the tunnel is. I only saw its butt. However, I knew it was a cat. It's not uncommon to see stray cats at night in this neighborhood. I see them all the time. However, I was very confused why the cat would jump off a 20-foot drop. I love all animals, and I have raised many stray kittens and baby birds. So, I was contemplating pulling over and going to see if he's okay. I didn't at first because my brother had recently gotten a new cat named Sylvester after the Looney Tunes character only a couple of days ago. And I knew if I found an injured cat, we would rescue it and want to keep it. But I turned around anyways and parked next to the school by the tunnel to see if it was okay. The roads were barren. It was 1 a.m. in the morning, quite quiet, in a Utah religious neighborhood. So I wasn't nervous in any way. I just wanted to see if the cat was okay. I park and get out. There is a fairly steep hill heading down into the tunnel, so I make my way down. I turn on my phone flashlight to see if I can see any sign of an animal, and I couldn't. The tunnel was empty, but I couldn't see the other side of the tunnel. I walk down the tunnel to the very end and don't see anything. The tunnel is maybe about 30 feet long, and then it comes out onto the other side of the road. I walk back extremely confused because a cat wouldn't just drop 20 feet down and be completely fine. Now this is the frightening part. As I'm walking back up the hill, I see an extremely bright light at the far end of the trail, and it's moving closer to me. I didn't know what it is. My first instinct was to run, but the light was getting closer, and I honestly wasn't scared because the neighborhood is primarily Mormon and right next to a school I used to go to. So I waited to see what it is. As it gets closer, I hear bike wheels rolling and pedals turning. I didn't want to look weird, so I don't run. I just keep walking back to my car. In my mind, I was trying to process why everyone would be riding their bike at 1 a.m. It was a woman. She was maybe 20 to 21. She was quite attractive, if I'm being honest. She was dressed in a floral print dress that looked like it came directly out of the 1960s. No shoes and long hair that fell across her cheeks. She says, "Hey," in a lovely, friendly voice. I responded with, "Hey, what's up?" or something like that. Everyone in Utah is really friendly and talkative, so I really didn't think anything of it, other than why the hell was she riding her bike this late? She said she was going home, and then she replied with a question about what I'm doing. I told her I was looking for a black and white cat I saw fall off the road because I was worried it got hurt. She responded with, "Oh no, I haven't seen a black and white cat around here, but I used to have a cat named Sylvester. He was so cool. He used to be able to open doors and stuff." My face felt like it got stung a million times by bees, and my heart dropped. Is this a fucking joke? Did she just say my new cat's name? I understand it's a common name for a black and white cat, but why did I just see one fall off a road and encounter a very strange looking woman who also had a black and white cat named Sylvester that just happens to be my new cat's name? There is no way this is actually happening. I would respond with, "Oh, wow, really? That's so funny," or something along those lines. I tell her to have a good night after telling her to keep an eye out for the cat. She responds with, Oh, of course I will." I just keep walking back to my car. I was kind of scared at this point, like actually scared. I get in my car and get on my phone to call my girlfriend. She doesn't answer, so I just hung up and drove off. As I back out and try to get onto the road, the woman isn't in sight. Genuinely, she is nowhere to be found. She should be easily spotted with the bright lights on her bike, but she's not. The trail was left dark and empty, as if she was never there. The woman was riding on the sidewalk. The trail splits off into two pathways. I go into the tunnel, and one goes onto the sidewalk that connects to the road. She was on the sidewalk. There's no way she could have gotten into the tunnel because I said the hill down into the tunnel is fairly steep. There's no way she have hidden or even walked down there with the bike. However, she was legitimately gone. Nowhere in sight, no lights, no bike, no sound, no nothing. Where did she go? So, can someone give me an explanation? Was it just some girl genuinely going home? Did she also have a cat named Sylvester? If so, how and why did she disappear? Also, why was she dressed like a 60s hippie? No shoes, floral dress, long ratty hair. I'm genuinely stumped. I have no other option but to come here and ask for an explanation. Do you guys think this was just some weird sighting or encounter? I don't know what to think. I'm not lying. She was nowhere to be found, and that's what was so strange to me. The same cat name was strange, and the outfit, but the strangest part was she was gone in an instant. Can someone please tell me what happened to me? Within the span of 2 weeks, I have noticed some things around our house aren't how we left them. 1. We exit our house through a sliding door into the garage where our cars are parked. Twice in the last 2 weeks, we've come home to find the sliding door open, our dogs in the yard. We lived here for about 2 years, and this has never happened before. 2. Our cat's food and water bowl are on a stand in the kitchen on the counter. 3 times in the last month, we found the bowl on the opposite side of the counter, not in the stand. When we return home, any idea what this could mean or why this is happening? Me and my partner moved in this flat at the end of last January. It's a fairly new flat, part of a block of flats. First thing we noticed after a few weeks is the fridge, brand new, would beep insistently at night and changing temperature on its own, as if someone is pressing the buttons. It would stay silent all day and would start beeping at night, or it would be quiet for weeks and then suddenly start beeping when one of us was in the room. We dismissed it as a faulty item. Then we had the toaster being found unplugged in the morning and hot as hell. While we were both positive it had been unplugged the night before, we moved the toaster on top of the fridge when not in use. Shoes started falling from the shoe rack in the middle of the night, same as a toilet paper holder. Google Nest came to life in the bedroom while no one was in there and played an Italian song I've never heard. I'm originally from Italy. While the activity log read unknown voice, said, "Play my favorite song." That freaked the shit out of us. We had the Xbox and the TV turning off and on their own. I lost a t-shirt, Alice in Chains Last Tour t-shirt, pretty particular, during laundry. As I was going through all the clothes coming out of the dryer, I found some long male underwear which neither me or my boyfriend ever saw before. We literally went over every single nook of the flat looking for that t-shirt. No luck. 2 months later, my boyfriend is doing his laundry, and surprise, the t-shirt pops out of the dryer like nothing ever happened. Fresh as fuck, like, what? Last thing, 2 nights ago, we were on the couch watching a movie, each at one corner, and a voice could clearly be heard in between us. I think I heard a laugh. My partner says it was more like a hello. Each of us turned to watch the other, but none of us had spoken. We're pretty freaked out by now, but still dismissing everything as coincidences, as we're pretty rational people. Also, he keeps having nightmares about ghosts haunting the flat, and he woke me up screaming more than once. What do you think? Should we be worried? Thanks in advance for any advice. So, I have recently returned to the home where I grew up my entire life, and I have always known there was something paranormal in that house, but I didn't realize the extent of it until leaving and coming back. So to preface, I used to have extreme night terrors almost every night in that house, but I just chalked it up to being a kid who was easily scared and having it bleed over into my sleep. But upon returning and staying for a while, they were back, and worse than before. The first night I dreamt that I had woken up and that something had crawled across my feet and was grabbing me and trying to pull me. The second night was worse, in my opinion, because the pulling continued, but something was standing at the foot of my bed and was so tall its head hit the ceiling. I couldn't make out any features, but I knew it was staring at me. And on top of that, my vanity mirror had lights shooting in and out of it, and that looked like hands coming out of it. I have had many experiences in that house. Besides that, and I have been grabbed many times while being fully aware and awake. My mom also had extreme night terrors, and I would see human figures crawl across her ceiling and in her closet. A side note about my room, there has always been a cold spot at the end of my bed where I saw a figure standing, and no matter what time of year, it is always there. Also, when I was growing up, we had multiple dogs and cats, and all of them avoided my room and would only go in if forced to. And if locked in, they would whine and cry and scratch at the door and would stare at absolutely nothing. The entire house had a bad feeling. But my room is by far the worst. I don't know what it is, and would like to know if anyone has any thoughts or opinions. Thank you. This happened this morning. I was sleeping, and just for context, my bed is a single bed, and it is pushed right up against my wall, but the head of my bed is by my door. I always fall asleep facing the wall as I feel more comfortable that way. Anyways, about 5 a.m. this morning, I got awoken to what felt like someone sitting on my bed by my legs. It wasn't a case of I was half asleep and half awake, because it woke me up, and when I was awoken, I could still feel it on my bed as if someone was still sitting there. My door makes a slight creaking when it opens and closes, so that would have woken me up if, for example, one of my family members had come into my room. I'm not sure why they would come into my room and sit on my bed at 5 a.m. as I was sleeping. I didn't check to see who was sitting there, because if nothing was there, I think it would have freaked me out more than something being there. So I pretended I didn't feel anything and just lied still for about 30 minutes to an hour. Eventually I fell back to sleep. I asked my brother and my father just in case, but they both said no, they hadn't been in my room at all. I have no idea what sat on my bed this morning. As a stuck teenager during lockdown, I was looking for ways to spend my time. Often I used to listen to various podcasts, play games, etc. But one day I came across a ghost podcast, where people would mail their stories and the podcaster would read it out. Everything was going good until the specific podcast. I recall it like it was yesterday. It was 10 p.m. and the new video had just dropped. I was exhausted, so decided to put my earphones in and go to bed. The podcast went good until the podcaster came across a particular story. The story was about a boy who was listening to the podcast, and suddenly he had a paranormal experience. And when this story was going on, the picture of God in my room falls, and boom, it creates a loud noise. Suddenly I woke up. I thought it was by accident, so I decided just to shake it off. After some time, I felt someone sleeping right next to me. I couldn't see anyone, but it was dark. But I felt the heavy breathing and could hear the things in my room falling. When I got up to check, everything seems normal. And when the light goes off, the sound and the heavy breathing starts. I rush to my parents' room and sleep on the floor and fall asleep. In the morning, my dad woke up and inquired what I was doing sleeping on the floor. I explained to him, saying the picture of God fell down when I was sleeping. So I got scared and I got in the room. But my dad looks at me in surprise and says, when he entered the room, the picture of God was hanging on the wall. So I think it's me hallucinating, so I just laugh it off. So in the morning, I sit and listen to the same podcast I had left in the middle. But to my surprise, the story of the boy who experienced paranormal activity after listening to the podcast wasn't there. After that, I stopped listening to that podcast. I never really experienced anything scary or paranormal, but I'm a spiritual being. I believe in my spirit guide's spiritual team. Today I was in my room, and I was about to close my window. My door opened. I thought it was either my niece or the other kids, but I opened the door, and no one was there. Then I thought to myself, maybe it's something else. So I closed the door, right? And it opened again. After that, I put my hand over the door, and the door opened. But I felt some resistance, like pushing, as if someone was on the other side, pushing it gently. I got kind of paranoid, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Now I can't sleep without having the light on. This isn't the first time this happened either. But the other times it happened, the door only opened once, never again. But this time it freaked me out. Any idea why the door opened? And why did I feel resistance as if someone was pushing the door open? Come on, I better not have ghosts in my house. I moved into a brand new apartment in March of 2020. This place is eerie. Some seriously weird negative vibes. There are a lot of tenants who also say the energy is all pretty damn creepy and uncomfortable around here when I bring it up to them. Additionally, many people have brought it up to me before I said anything, and they mimic my sentiments. So basically, the main paranormal activity is a feeling of being pushed back and forth, as though they have hands on my shoulders, pushing and pulling, especially when I sit cross-legged on my bed, which I often am. I thought at first I was doing it mindlessly, but about 3, 4, 5 times noticing it, I was perplexed and started to put effort into staying still by holding my muscles extremely still, making sure that it wasn't me. Because of it happening so often, it started to really get to me. I showed a couple people when they were here, and they agreed there was no way I could rock so forcefully without moving some part of my body. They were confident that I wasn't doing it, but I wanted some evidence that was foolproof. I needed to know beyond a shadow of a doubt I had an entity here, like I suspected. I've taken endless videos where I am moving myself compared to when it rocks me. I constantly try to take photos all around me looking for orbs to no avail. Well, today I got it, and honestly I'm so relieved as it makes me feel a hell of a lot less crazy to have irrefutable proof, at least in my opinion. I can finally believe my own observations. I just have never experienced anything firsthand. But I never doubted that there's things we don't know. In the past few days, it's been way stronger and kicked things up a notch in frequency and strength. It feels like it's putting pressure on me now, pushing me downwards into the bed and around and around. I'm spooked. I was hoping someone had some similar experiences. The picture shows 2 orbs up in the corner, and then a fuzzy, like round mass directly above and behind me, almost like a person's silhouette. Enjoy. When I was in college, there was a rumor around campus that the ghost of a lady who attended back in the 1800s was still being seen wandering around the school. I heard that during one of her more recent sightings, she thwarted a sexual assault by scaring off the attacker. I was still pretty skeptical though, and I didn't really believe it. But one day during my last semester, I started believing the rumors. I left my dorm and I was headed to class. I was thinking about my final project for graduation, and I forgot to look before I crossed the street. The moment my feet reached the edge of the sidewalk, I heard something make a hissing noise from behind me. I stopped and immediately turned to look behind me. That's when I noticed that I nearly walked directly in front of a moving car. The hiss I heard didn't sound like an animal. It kind of sounded like the noise people make in a library when they're trying to get someone's attention. I honestly think the campus ghost saved my life. Yeah, you'll just have to hear me out on this one. I love a good ghost story, but I'm not really a huge believer in that kind of stuff. But damn, if there isn't something weird going on, then I don't know what the hell to say. For privacy's sake, I won't mention the name of the place that I work at. Just know it's in Texas. I've worked at this club for a couple years as a waitress, an exotic dancer, and due to an agitated injury, currently a bartender. I know the girls that work here well, and I have a pretty good knowledge of the regular customers. We had a very popular dancer here named Carmen, who was in her late 40s, a devoted mother and also a full-time nurse who danced her way through school and continued to dance part-time. She was the coolest girl that I've ever worked with, very loving, nurturing, and protective of those around her. Unfortunately, a few weeks ago, her life was cut tragically short in a car accident. She didn't suffer from what we were told. She died in the hospital a couple of hours later, surrounded by her kids, her ex, and her sister. Everyone at the club was devastated, including customers who all loved their time with her. Carmen usually dances every 3 weeks. She would come in on Friday night and would continue to dance until Sunday evening. Then she would do her usual single mom duties. She mainly danced to spend the money on herself, as everything else she had was spent on her kids. As a bartender, I get there a little earlier to make sure we have everything needed for a shift. The manager had taken Carmen's bra out of her locker and hung it over the bar as some sort of effed up tribute to the beloved dancer. It was super weird, but I understood the sentiment. We had maybe an hour until we opened, so I turned on the stereo to listen to music while I was moving bottles from the inventory closet. As soon as I turned on my music app, Paradise City started playing, which was her song. After that, the stage lights came on, something that I have no control over. I just stopped and looked at the stage. I saw what looked like a shadow move in front of one of the mirrors. As soon as the song ended, my phone died, which I always fully charge before work. Then the lights shut off again. I'm getting a little emotional typing this out, like I have tears forming. I don't know what that was, but I like to think it was her, coming in for one last sign-off performance. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm grieving. Maybe I'm right. Guess we will never know. I've just had a baby. Well, just being 2 months ago. I'm having no sleep. I'm cranky, and those who know this stage know how difficult it is. Regardless, weird things have been going on in our house ever since bringing the baby home from the hospital. It first started with strange smells. I know what you're thinking, nappies and such, but I assure you it wasn't those or my daughter. I would be feeding her and putting her in the crib next to me and go get a bottle of water out of the fridge. Upon entering the kitchen, which is downstairs and a few more rooms away, it smelled like rotting garbage. That's the best I can describe it. I thought the kitchen sink was blocked up again and made a mental note to mention it to my husband in the morning. I mentioned it, and he took it apart and nothing. No blockage, no smell. It seems like this smell moves from room to room. Next, I'm awake mostly all night. I would hear 3 loud random knocks on our bedroom door. My husband and I would be in bed, and no one else would be in the house. We only live with just us 3, myself, my husband, and our baby. I thought I was losing my mind or so sleep deprived that I was making it up, or maybe something fell one time and my imagination hung on to that. I don't know. It happened every night. I'd open the door and see no one there. No windows open, nothing. Like I said, I thought I was going crazy until my husband stayed up with her one night while I got some rest. I hastily got into bed and wheeled myself off to sleep in case he changed his mind. The next thing, I'm getting shaken awake. It was my husband asking if I heard the knocks. Okay, just not me. I told him not to worry and went back to sleep, so no one was going to ruin my very rare nap time. I now keep having dreams of this figure. It's a shadow man, but I can't make out some features. It seems to have 4 sets of horns on its head and it's pitch black, sort of like a black swirl, if that makes sense. In my first dream, it was standing in the door hallway blocking me from exiting. It was blacker than the room and had red eyes. I started to feel an overwhelming sense of dread, and then my daughter cried. I awoke up from that dream. The next one is right over my daughter's crib and staring down at us. I told my husband about this, as in a look how crazy I am with no sleep sort of way, and he went white. He grabbed me and the baby, and the next thing, we were sitting in the car. He said he didn't want it to hear us. He told me that he was trying to nap on lunchtime as I was out with our baby shopping, and he thought, why not? He woke up to this black swirly thing right next to him, its face inches away from his. He said it didn't have a face, just had 4 black shadow horn outlines and a wispy black body. Its head was on the same pillow as my husband's. That's how close they were. He told me he jumped backwards as in a sort of oh crap moment, and when he did, the figure folded in on itself and left, not without that god-awful smell. Help please, guys. What is this? What do we do? I want my daughter to be safe. 5 scratches just appeared on my arm. As I'm holding my son, my other arm started to burn. I have 2 burn ovals on the other. All appeared within 10 minutes. My boyfriend had a dream of a woman on top of him and he couldn't breathe a few nights ago. And the woman got off him and went back into the back bedroom, not leaving the house. Then had a dream about a dog continuously biting him. I've had very offset dreams myself. They do have a burn to them. My nails aren't sharp enough to break skin. Not my son, my boyfriend, or animals. None of these scratches make sense. They appear out of nowhere as I'm standing in the kitchen, and then the other arm minutes later. I feel crazy. I need answers. Please help. I feel like this is the only thing left that might be explainable. I was laying in bed this morning, house locked up. Girlfriend was in the bath. We both heard someone walking around, and both heard my printer making the scanning sounds. My computer was off. Very strange. We didn't find anyone in the house. So it happens every so often, and only in my apartment, but I'll be watching TV, and out of the corner of my eye, I'll see dark figures move across my kitchen, to my bedroom, to my kids' room. I don't know if it's my eyes playing tricks on me or what, but if I look directly at it, nothing's there. It's just every time in the corner of my eyes. So, this sounds crazy, I know. I woke up this morning with brown spots on the soles of my feet. It looks like I stepped on paint or something. I cannot remove it. The weird thing is that I didn't walk barefoot at all these days. I have searched the house to find the cause, but nothing. The only thing that comes in my mind is something I read about. Seer, black magic curse. If the curse fell, brown henna spots appear. I don't know if I believe in this. I'm Christian, so I don't know if it's even possible. What do you guys think? There was this large frame on the top of my bedroom wall, plastic and cheap. That day I noticed that a corner of the frame was hanging out. A crack had formed in the frame and was easily held together with some Scotch tape. It was a temporary fix that held the glass in the frame until I could replace it. I put it back on the nail and forgot about it. That night I stayed up because it was the weekend. I'm not overly religious, but I say a prayer or two every night. The same words and the same wants any person could have. Peaceful days and a break from a few things. But after that, right after, as my mind was just drifting to sleep, I heard the thunderous sound of the glass falling from the frame onto the desk below it. There was no mistake. I heard it as it shattered over the pens and printer paper and onto the floor, but there was nothing. I searched all reasonable areas, of which would have been half of my small room, but it was as if the glass had simply bowed out from reality. There wasn't even a shard hidden in the carpet. My empty vacuum and Roomba can assist to that. I don't know what or who did that, but my heart was not completely healthy at the time. Cleaning up the mess would have been difficult, but not impossible. I chalked it up to someone answering a prayer to make the condition lighter on me. I've never posted here before. I do a lot of responses and have occasionally described some many events that happened in the house I grew up in. I just never felt like writing out a large post. But I did want to write a quick post about something that happened that was just kind of comforting. My dad had a unique smell that clung to all his jackets and shirts. It was engine grease and cigarettes and soap. I'd wear his flannel shirts and smell it, and it was really comforting. After he passed, I put off washing the stuff of his I kept for a long time, for as long as I could, because I just wanted that smell to linger. But since I wear some of that stuff regularly, it had to happen eventually. I sometimes look at candles that say tobacco or whatever, but nothing's ever the same. Then one day when I climbed into my car, it was there. It was like I climbed into the car with him and he was sitting with me. I don't know. It was just really nice to think he was there for a minute. So, this has been going on for around a year. I constantly hear knocks on my bedroom door, and when I open it, nobody's there. When I'm home alone, I'll hear noises like footsteps. When me and my dog are sitting, I as well hear my mother's voice calling my name or something, but she never said anything. I see orbs every now and then. Not very often, though. One thing that worries me is I feel this demonic presence sometimes, and when I do, there's a cold spot, no matter how hot the house is. Also, one thing I have noticed is when I plug in my phone and go away for a few minutes, it's unplugged. Nobody goes in my room, really. It's really freaky. One more thing. A few times when I leave something in one room, the next minute it's in a whole other room. A few days ago, I took my dog out to my backyard so he could potty. While I was out there, I saw a few shadow-like people. A few were pure black shadowy figures. though they didn't seem to do anything. I kept walking around my backyard waiting for my dog to do his business, and then a white shadowy figure appeared. I'd never seen a shadow that was white before. It moved a bit to the side and did a motion with its hand that almost looked like it was waving. At this point, I picked up my chihuahua and just ran back inside. Tonight, I took the dog back out again for his nighttime potty before bed. But we were outside for only 20 minutes. I did not see the shadow figures again tonight, but instead something else happened. Something touched the back of my neck. I froze in place. I yelled for my dog. He immediately ran to me, and I called my best friend immediately. I had to talk to someone, even if it was just on the phone. I did not feel safe without hearing another person's presence. When I go back inside, my dog begins whining this pitiful cry. It was a very quiet and soft cry. I worry for what this thing or things might be in my backyard. I had many iffy sightings and interactions in this backyard about 10 years ago that seemed to be a violent nature. But I've only recently, as of 2022, seen things again here. I am currently seeking the advice of the friend I called, as she had many interactions with similar things and knows of safe ways to go about handling such things. If it weren't for her phone call, I might be crying right now. I know it doesn't sound interesting, but it's different from what you think. When I was really little, I would hear knocking on the wall sometimes, soft sometimes and hard sometimes. I would knock patterns and I would hear the pattern back. That's what creeped me the F out. Sometimes it would be a bang, and I'd hide under my covers, and it would still knock. The wall was an outside one, but no trees were near it. And it was on the second floor away from my parents' and siblings' room. If anyone has had a similar experience or knows what it might have been, please let me know. It stuck with me a lot better than it should have. I could not find an analog of the concept of Donovoy in English. This is a guardian spirit of the house. He has his own will and likes or dislikes. People don't see him, but cats do. My cats are definitely communicating with him. I doubted the existence of something like this in an apartment building until I bought my own apartment. My stories of encountering him are more funny than scary. So, I bought the tiniest and cheapest apartment on the top floor of a house built in the 80s. The apartment was in a terrible condition with a rotten floor in the kitchen with burnt electrical wiring in most of the premises. I want to say that there was no light in the apartment in the room, that I wanted to make a nursery. I put shelves on which our clothes and underwear were stored. Early one morning, I went in there, and in total darkness, it wasn't dawn yet, I started looking for underpants, intending to go get a shower. My son was sleeping in his crib, and I didn't turn on the lights in the rest of the apartment so as not to wake him up. I silently rummaged through the shelves of the closet, trying to find underwear. I couldn't find it, so I went to shower, hoping to find some panties later when the room gets a little bit lighter. In short, people, when I entered the room after a shower, there were neatly laid out underwear in the children's bed at my son's feet. I was stunned and then thanked the Donovoy for his care. One day I was sitting and sewing. I often sew costumes for children's theater, and after finishing the seam, I began to look for scissors to carefully cut the thread. I didn't see the scissors nearby and went into another room to find them. When I came back, the sewing was finished. The knot was tied on the fabric, and the thread was neatly cut off. After standing for a while with bulging eyes, I thanked Donovoy again. My Donovoy is not always so cute, but now I don't want to talk about his dark sides. True, I saw him once. Most cats have a habit of having zoomies at night, and my cat also likes this. One day the cat was jumping around the kitchen in the dark and made such a noise that he woke me up. When I just opened my eyes in a half doze, I saw that the cat was not just running, but running after a small green ball. I was scared, woke up completely, and the vision disappeared. Such an interesting company lives in my apartment. By the way, my cat's name is Constantine. I think this is a funny coincidence. As an avid horror enjoyer across all media and otherwise, I've always been interested in the paranormal. That being said, I've always been a huge skeptic. I poke holes in other stories all the time. I always have, just never been on that side of the fence. I swear by science and logic and whatever. But earlier, something fairly small happened that completely rocked my world. I woke up at around 1:40 a.m. and went to the loo. About maybe 10 to 15 minutes later, at which point I was already properly awake because I'd let my dogs out into the garden and been on my phone for a little while. My bedroom is at the bottom of my stairs. My loo is at the top. Anyway, when I came back downstairs and into my room, I checked my door so my dogs didn't get out of my room. But when I went back to sleep and sat down, not even 20 seconds later, I heard Diamond coming down the stairs. This isn't uncommon in my house since I have 5 people live here. So someone is always up to use the loo or get a drink or whatever. But when I got to the bottom of the stairs, my door opened and the hallway was empty and the lights were still off. I went out to look and everyone's bedroom doors were shut and no one was up and about. My stairs creak on their own because yes, there would. But I've lived in this house for nearly a decade. They creak on their own all the time nowadays. But anyone with old wooden stairs would probably know the difference between that and someone literally walking down them. My door was shut. Literally, it can't open on its own. That's because the latch thing or whatever it's called. I know no one here has any reason to believe me, but I was hoping someone would humor me and just give me their take on it. Being a skeptic has been a big part of me for a long time. I guess I'm just pretty rattled. Strange stuff happens around me all the time, but I'm almost always able to come up with a logical explanation. I can't for this one. I had written some happenings in our apartment a while ago, like falling things, strange smells, and other usual paranormal stuff. Nothing really scary, just weird stuff. Like a year ago, I started feeling extremely uncomfortable in our bedroom. I couldn't sleep and had bad nightmares. Sometimes with invisible ghosts who wanted to get to me, and sometimes just normal stuff. So I decided to sleep in the living room from time to time. But it got so much worse that I couldn't be in the bedroom at all. Even now, if I'm alone in the bedroom, I have a bad feeling, but I cannot put my finger on it. So recently, my girlfriend who sleeps alone in the bedroom experiences increasing paranormal stuff. She hears footsteps, feels like something was sitting on the bed and falling or moved things. But she was not believing in paranormal stuff. But now even she is creeped out. What could it be? I know that not everything has to be paranormal, but there are too much unexplainable things. I'll try to make this story short. My girlfriend and I are living in an apartment which was the attic of a house maybe 10 years ago. There is no regular hunting going on, just some unexplainable noises here and falling things there. And this thing what cats do when they stare in a corner of the room. But yesterday, there was something strange. We were watching a series in the living room. Above the TV, there is a cupboard where we have really cool stuff. Things like merch from movies, video games. So on TV, there was a scene where one of the actors counted 3, 2, 1, and you guess, at go, 3 of the statues fell down, but not like they were falling. It was like they were pushed with power. At the same time, the TV switched off. My girlfriend never believed in ghosts. Now she does. I'm not really sure if this is paranormal or not. Could have easily been my eyes playing tricks on me. For context, this took place around 8 or 9 p.m. with the lights on. I don't do drugs. I don't even smoke weed. And I was completely sober. A couple of weeks ago, I was in the bathroom on my phone, scrolling through social media. I happened to look over at the bathtub, which was across from where the toilet is. I see that one small section of the tub was shimmering. The best way to describe it is like you're looking at a reflection in water that gets distorted by ripples. I wasn't particularly scared by what I was seeing and mostly chalked it up to being tired or something. I've been reading paranormal stories lately, so I figured I would post about it and see if anyone knows what I am talking about. Okay, so this happened to me several years ago, but has been on my mind quite a bit recently. I was about 19 or 20, going through a phase where I've been sleeping on the couch every night. On this particular night, I had been having some trouble sleeping and ended up just lying awake. I had my eyes closed for a moment, still wide awake, when I felt something touch my foot. When I looked up, it was a cloaked skeletal figure, hood up, holding a scythe. Needless to say, I was a little freaked out. It stood there for a moment before dissolving into thin air, at which point I got myself out of there and did not return until morning. Now, at the time, I was definitely a skeptic and had never even considered any sort of Reaper entity being real. I am still unsure, though I have never in my life had an hallucination like that, nor was I even half asleep when this happened. I have had paranormal experiences since, but this one still stumps me. Obviously, I didn't die, though I was pretty spooked. No one else in my life died until quite some time later. So, I have come here to hear any thoughts on the matter of similar experiences anyone might like to share. I know this is short, but thanks for reading. I'm a male in my 20s and do medical work from home. Therefore, my internet is a need for my job. After phone issues, I never reconnected my number since what I need it for is on Wi-Fi. Anyways, I rarely travel, so figured it doesn't pay financially when there is access to most needs. All morning long, my programs were running slowly and things weren't responding. While currently living with my grandmother, as I'm working, I hear when family call her to check in on her. My uncle normally calls earlier than normal on this day and claims he called her multiple times before while no calls came through. Around 1:50 p.m., everything crashed completely. No phone, no internet was available. I tried to restart the router multiple times, completely shutting off and checking wires. Previous DSL wires were spliced and have managed to fix, but after all, still no phone or internet, no service on my cell phone. So all means of communication were down. You got the rundown. So this is where things get odd. At 2:50 p.m., a state trooper shows up at my door, claiming they received a 911 call from our landline number. Confused, I asked him what time she received the call. She replied 15 minutes before she showed up at the door. My grandmother does have a life alert for when I'm not there, so I informed her of it. She did restate that the call did come from the landline number, also confirming the last few digits. She asked to come in, and she talked some more. She made conversation with my grandmother, and I went to grab the house phone. I seen the screen still displaying check telephone line, stating it's still down. I went back to her saying we couldn't possibly make the call while giving her the phone. She picked it up and it was dead air. No sound. 11 p.m. as I'm writing this and still no connection. I told her about the situation this morning and that when she received the call, it was within the time frame of not being able to receive connection. Her face said it all. I still have no clue what happened, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. We have internet back, but still no phone. Internet came back about 15 minutes after the trooper headed out. I've dealt with paranormal events my entire life, and even more. Recently, I found a familiar painting known as the Crying Boy in an antique shop near me, and have photos of it. This is supposedly a cursed painting. Not sure if it's relevant of having the photos of it in my phone or not, or if this is just another paranormal experience to add to my list. After all, the trooper did mention my deceased grandfather's name, whom I've always had another very visual experience with after missing him one night. Would love to tell more stories about my life, have photos and more to go along with some of them. If anyone is interested in other stories, let me know, but otherwise, thanks for reading. My mom is the biggest skeptic ever. So when my dad started telling her that he had on a couple occasions heard a sound like toenails on hard wood and seen a little white ball float down the hallway, she blew him off for pranking her or imagining things. But then she heard the sound of dogs' nails when she was alone, and their only dog was sitting on the couch next to her. Her dog jumped up and ran over to investigate, and the noise stopped. So last night she couldn't sleep and got up for a drink and heard a sound of dogs' nails again. She said she saw a little dog in the doorway and without her glasses on, and in the dark she thought it was her dog, Rosie, come to follow her. She walked over to pick her up, and the dog just dropped through the floor. Gone. Rosie was still in bed and asleep with Dad. She is absolutely convinced now that it's her dad and his deeply loved Chihuahua, who died 2 Septembers ago and a week apart, and they got buried together. This is my mom, whose favorite book ever is Demon Haunted World by Carl Sagan. My mom who explains away anything. Seeing her so convinced is shaking my own skepticism. And what a comfort to think that my pop and his pup might still be around in some way. I miss them every day.